Wax back again. Had a major snafu with the audio recorder. Just lost a ton of material. But we're going to try this again. So today, we're going to do a little experiment. So let's jump into this experiment real quick. Here is what we're going to do. Here's a sample. Now let's inspect that sample. That sample happens to be 1 second long, which is 44,100 samples. And why is that? Well, just in case anybody doesn't know, this is a 44 1K sampler. It samples at the sample rate of 44,100 samples. That's what the MV does. All right. Now it's for the experimentation time. Let's go back out of this. We're going to jack this up 1 octave. All right, we're going to go into the sampler. We're going to make sure that's on resample. Auto emphasis on normalize. Make sure it's at 1 second sample time. Pad start. Everything looks good. Hit that. It stops after a second. And let's quick assign that to a patch. We'll put it on A#0. Bam. Let's go back into the edit screen. We're going to jack it up 2 octaves now to +24, and we're going to do the same thing. Sampling, resample, 1 second, blah, 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 pad, okay, start. After 1 second, it stops, and we got the result. Looks like the sample's good. We're going to add it to a patch. We're going to put it on D1. All right, let's go back and do this again. We'll take it up 3 octaves this time, +36. All right, everything looks good. Going to the sampler, sampling, resample, bam, 1 second. All right, let's start. Pad trigger. After 1 second, it'll stop. All right, sample is good. We will quick assign that to F#1. Okay. All right, let's go into the quick edit screen and we'll take the original sample back down to 0. Oops. We'll make sure 1 shot is on the releases up. We'll do that for all of them. 1 shot is on releases up. 1 shot is on releases up. All right, so the first sample was +24, so we're going to slow it back down, -12. It's the same technique that was used on older samples like the SB12, 1200, Akai S950, and anything with a short sample time. Let's go to the next one. That was +24. We got to take it back to -24. All right. Next one, it was 3 octaves down, so that's -36. All right, let's compare the original. All right, +12 and then -12 after it was sampled. Let's just see what that sounds like. It's a slight difference. You might not be able to hear it with the YouTube algorithm, but it is there. Ever so slight. All right, let's go to the next one, which is +24, -24. Original. Definitely a difference there. Let's play it again. All right, let's go to the 3rd octave one, which is +36, -36. You can definitely hear the difference there. All right. So let me say this first. In my experimentation on my own, from doing this for a minute, you got about a 3 octave range here. When you start going past this 36, it kind of sounds the same. I can go into Y and it sounds the same. Also to note that, let's say you do you take it up +9. You got plus or minus 50 of fine tuning that'll change this because it's the tuning that changes it, changes the speed. So, you know, plus or minus 50, and then of course tuning for each one of these. You multiply that out, you got a few thousand adjustable. Ratios that you can use to to sample with. It's just like on the 950, on the S950, where they had the bandwidth settings, where you could 3019 something, I believe. I had to pull my 950 out, but it's the same thing. Now let's go inspect all this stuff. Let me see. Make sure these are right. 12. All right, that's minus 36. We're gonna inspect these samples. All right, that's the that is the first sample, 44.1. Let's go to the second one. Now look at this. Now this is what I surmise here. And I suspect, let's take the left block off. I'm suspecting that's half of 44.1, which would be a 50. This would be, that'd be 22. Bam, look at that. It's half. So what that tells you is that the sample rate was halved. It's a trick with the older samplers because you were speeding them up on the input, putting them on 45 or whatever. The sampler could only take half of the resolution was only half, or whatever speed you sped it up. It took less slices of the sample. Now taking up a pitch here, you got less slices, so the resolution is, instead of 44.1 sampler, it's a 22.050 at 1 octave up. And then when you decompress it on the back end and slow it back down, it sounds different because the sample rate is different. Kind of that's how that works. But it was still this SB12 or whatever was still, what was it, 26K or whatever it was. It was still 26K, but the act of speeding it up made you take less samples, if that makes any sense. So let's zoom into this. See, it's almost sample accurate. And what I have found, that, see, there's a little extra at the end. If you go to the beginning of the sample, you got a little jitter there when you press the pad. So if you cut that off there, you did a little truncation, it'd be sample accurate. But I mean, that's close enough. You're only talking about a couple samples at the end. But all right, let's move on to the next sample. Wow, look at that. Now, if this was 22.050, let's half that again, because we went down 2 octaves this time. So that would be 11.025. And look at that. There you go. That effective sample rate is at 11,025 samples. Again, let's zoom in here. See that little garbage at the end, but in the front you got that little jitter there, and that makes up, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure it's pretty sample accurate for the most part. I mean, that's close enough. Let's go to the next one. And if you go half of that, what's that? And that's, what is it, 55, 12 and a half, 5. Let's go 12 or 13. Let's go 13. Zoom in. Again, you get the little garbage at the end, but you got that jitter right there on the front of the pad. And effectively, what you have there is a sample rate of 5,513. But like I said, from my experimentation, you can't go lower than that. If you jack it up over 36 or whatever, it still comes out to this number. For whatever reason, I don't really find it necessary to go any lower or dirtier than that. But that's what that is. The sample rate is fully adjustable when you, you know, going in, you adjust this up to plus 36 and then take it back down. And like I said, you got the fine tuning, fully adjustable. You got several thousand settings to use there. But how about this? Let's go the other way. Let's take this down 2 octaves. So now, so if each octave you had to double it because you sped it up. If you slow it down, you got to half it going the other way. Which means that you got to start doubling the time, because 1 octave would be 2 seconds. 2 octaves would be 4. All right. How about we sample that? So on resample, bam, bam, bam. Okay, start that. 4 seconds, it stops exactly. Now, what do we notice here? We notice we have 176,400 samples on that. Let's assign that to a patch. Let's quick edit that. Let's one shot that. Let's release up. Let's jack that up 2 octaves. We gotta go the opposite way now. Now let's listen to this is the original. Oops. Gotta set the original back to the right tuning. Let's original. New one. Original, new one. Original. Let's go sample it so you can see the samples. Original, new one. Original, new one. Original, 44.1K samples. New one, 176,400K samples. So what does that mean? Does that mean that you can sample at 176,400K samples per second? Yes and no. It was a trick, just like the old SB 1200 trick. So by slowing it down, just like speeding it up, except the other way, you were able to capture more samples per second. So it was still 44.1K samples per second, but you were sampling over 4 seconds at a lower pitch. But just like you compressed on the front end and then decompressed going the other way, going this way, you're going to decompress the original sound, then you're going to compress it on the back end by speeding it up. So now you have more information from them 4 seconds squeezed down into 1 second. So it gives you 176,400K samples per second. Now, it sounds just like the original, and I'm not going to go into further explain why it's different, but I'll just tell you this, and you can, if you want to try this out, you'll see on your own. If you time stretch these 2 samples, that original sample and a new sample, if you time stretch them, the new sample, because there's a lot more information squeezed in a second, will not sound exactly the same as the original. The artifacts are going to sound different because you have a lot more samples and squeezed down into that 1 second. So it's going to give you a different effect. Now you can only tell from time stretching, but you know, they sound exactly the same, you know, it regular, exactly the same. But like I said, when you time stretch them, you will hear the difference. But I just thought that was it was just interesting, just part of my experimentation when I first kind of went over this, just delving into the mechanics of how this works. Just an interesting finding. Maybe somebody will like the artifacts of the time stretching. But yeah, that's it as far as this part goes. Dealing with the S950 like bandwidth, or the sample rate adjustment, how you can manipulate it so it's like kind of fully adjustable and dirtying your sounds up, or you know, sounding like some old school samplers. It's another trick you can add into your toolbox. I use it all the time. But yeah, it's just something interesting that your MV can do. So I just wanted to show you that experiment. And now, let's move on to something else.
Well, what about the emphasis on the sample?
Well, all right. What we are going to do here, this is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to copy. Let's talk about the emphasis. All right. So for some people who do not know this, let me see if I get this right now. The MV de-emphasizes on the outputs and it pre-emphasizes on the inputs. I think that's how it goes. I might have it backwards. But anyway, yeah, and you can look it up, but it has to do with electronic engineering and equipment. Why they do that, FM signaling, and it gets you a better signal to noise ratio and noise floors and all that. You can read up on that. But the on the sample screen, you got the auto emphasis, and you use that when resampling because, like I said, when it goes out, it de-emphasizes. So when it comes back in, you want to emphasize it, or it's not going to sound the same. I remember back in the day, a lot of people didn't click auto emphasis, and they were wondering why the original sample didn't sound like the new sample. And that's because basically the de-emphasis is a high-end roll-off. It's a low-pass filter is essentially what it is. How can you exploit that low-pass filter? I'll go over that. But yeah. Now I believe if you're sampling in, see, you don't need the auto emphasis because it adds it. But I think if you click auto emphasis, I think you will get the attenuation of the signal coming in, which is a high-end curve. It's the opposite of the low pass, so it attenuates those high-end frequencies. So you can do that if you want to. Let's see here. And as far as sampling in, now you can also, with the sample, you can go in a sample edit, and you can go to emphasis, and I'll show you. This is a nice little trick too to get the free low pass filter on there. You can de-emphasize the sample. And you do it a few times. All right, let's see. Get a nice low pass. Let's do it 3 or 4 times, so you can really start to hear the difference. This is, let's see, that's 4 times. Let's say 3, 4. Let's do it 4. This is the original. Hear the difference? Original. There's a difference there. Now you can keep doing it a couple more times or to whatever your liking is. Let's go the other way. This is another copy. We're going to do some pre-emphasis. Let's do that a few times. One more time so you can hear it. All right. You hear that sizzle? All right, original. That's the new one. Old one, new one. Old one, new one. Original, new one. Low pass one. Pre-emphasize, de-emphasize, pre-emphasize, original. So, and one more thing I'll get into just to add to this is, and it's in the manual, when you're importing sounds that came from other samplers, and this is another reason why Roland did it, depending on what sampler that sound was taken off of, and you won't de-emphasize because it's too hot coming in. Or if that sampler didn't have the pre-emphasis routine, pre-emphasis routine, you'll have to add pre-emphasis afterwards. Now, if the sound is too hot with pre-emphasis, it'll clip, and that's usually with cymbals and real high-end frequency sounds. So if the cymbals are really hot, it'll clip. So this is just something you get used to knowing that just from doing it when importing sounds, and whether you have to add pre-emphasis or use the de-emphasis routine. But that's what that's for. But what I just showed you was the creative use of it to use the pre-emphasis and de-emphasis. De-emphasis is a lot of those older samples. I like the MPC 60. I know it de-emphasized. I don't know if it added pre-emphasis back, but a lot of those older ones, why they had such a nice low end was because of that. Because I don't think they added the pre-emphasis back in. So yeah, you can kind of get that free low pass at some of those older samplers, and you can add some high end with the pre-emphasis. But that is that, and I think my next one I'm gonna get into some creative. We'll experiment with some creative sampling of some drums to get them. I don't know. I'll think of something. I don't know, a creative way I want the drums to sound, and I'll show you how I go about my mindset and what I do to my process that I go through. Just just to let you know, let you see, and maybe it'll help somebody out. But if it just helps one person, hey, I'm happy. So yeah, with that, waxing, I'm out.
I'll be back.